Okay, now let me show you some tools and techniques that are required to perform successful social engineering attacks. A little bit of preface, right? So first of all, remember that everything that we do in this video and what you should do in order to practice in this kind of techniques should be performed over the environment that you control. Okay, so the thing is that social engineering services, social engineering penetration testing, is not normally requested by customers. Only very mature infrastructures or only very mature, organizationally mature clients do that. Yeah. So the general stereotype is that we should not test over the social channel because we are already sure that you can hack us. But this is not excuse. Yeah, so naturally, if you know that something may go wrong, you still have to understand what and how, and have to take this input data in order to increase the performance of your security controls. However, this is not working, yeah, normally in most cases, and bug bounty programs are not exception. So let's say Yahoo, right, has social engineering excluded from the scope, and most bug bounty program targets do the same thing. So remember that you cannot do that on bug bounty programs scope, and you should do that using your own virtual environments or the boxes that you deployed to the cloud or whatever, whichever you like. So I have skipped some portion of preparation, yeah, for this video, for it not to be very boring, because what you will need to perform an exercise that I'm going to show you is create a box, a virtual box under Linux somewhere in the cloud. You can choose provider freely. The only requirement is that it should have public IP address, right? You should register a domain name, a plausible domain name that looks like your client's or looks like one of your client systems rented in the cloud or whatever, right? So something that you will clone in order to create a website that will harvest credentials, for example, or deploy some remote control agents. And of course, you have to prepare the tools, because the toolkit of a social engineer is I cannot say that the state of software development in this particular sector is really mature, right? So it's always mutating, it's always changing, the dependencies always break. So whenever you start a social engineering engagement, do not update your tools within the engagement period, right? So prepare yourself and do not update anything until you finish, because it might break. Okay, and fortunately that doesn't last for too long. It's normally 2 to 3 or 4 weeks. So let's start from taking a look at Social Engineer Toolkit, right? In order for it to work, you have to actually grab it from GitHub, right? So that's the name of the repository, and it relies on Metasploit framework and some functionality, which we will not cover in this video, but you just need to know that it is there, and sometimes it uses Metasploit for payload generator, or for just uses exploits that are provided by it, and so on. So let's see what's inside. Inside we have this typical Python project file structure, right? There are some modules. There is, of course, README, and there is a source directory. So you install it by setup.py, right? It creates this configuration file, set config, and it basically needs really few changes. So here you have to put the full path to Metasploit, and also you have to find and check whether Apache server is set to on. So if so, it will use an existing Apache server installation and just put all the files it creates to its working directory, right? Like this one, right? Okay. And what's also important, please, before you start creating any files, create this one, right? So you will need robots.txt, because if you don't create it and you don't disallow any spidering of your host by search engines, you will very quickly be identified by Google or Bing or whatever and put into this safe browsing block list or an analog of that. Okay. One other important thing is that this setup that I'm going to show you, it doesn't last for long. Okay, so let's say you have created this long unique domain name that in this case I guess is something like accounts google.com, and then that's not it. Okay, here it is. So you have created this really long domain name in a fictional domain, or the one that belongs to you. So I used the one I already have registered just to avoid this registration burden. I just created this long subdomain, which is totally possible. No one checks that. And as you see, come on. It's also available through HTTPS because I have already created a certificate for it by, of course, Let's Encrypt. Thanks those cool guys for that. Our life is much easier now. And what's important, when you deploy a clone of a Google-owned website, for example here, right, and you come to this site, or one of your targets visits this site in Google Chrome, it automatically reports this as an incident to Google Safe Browsing. If you dealt with it, you know that that's really slow. Yeah, so if you want something to be blocked by Google Safe Browsing, it takes a few days or even weeks, yeah, for them to react. But this functionality is automated. So since the point in time when first Google Chrome or Safari or whatever browser that uses that functionality visits your crafted website, you have minutes. Yeah, you have up to an hour or two to go on. So you have to be very quick in your attack, or you have to use some other means of content delivery than just hosting a website. There are some others, and I will show you a really clever example that I observed just during last week. This is really disturbingly clever, but this is not a like general MO of social engineers. That's something really clever. In general, you will host websites and you will have to act really quick. Yeah. So as you see, we have domain name, we have SSL certificate for everything to look legit and not draw additional attention to what we do, what we send. What we'll do now is to craft a website, is to clone basically Google website or use a template for the sake of this particular example. Yeah, and you have to understand that here anything basically can follow. You can imitate the URL that Google normally puts in this long authorization schemes that they redirect you to and from. Yeah, so in order for it to look legit, you will have to create a really long URL. Next, let's fire up the social engineering toolkit.